Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversation at Home program. I'm Nzinga Blake from ABC-owned television stations, and I'm so honored to be here to have a conversation with a beautiful, talented star that we've had the pleasure to watch grow up in the spotlight. Before we are joined by our guest today, though, I want to let you know that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the foundation has given over $6.5 million in COVID relief to help more than 7,000 performers. If you're a SAG-AFTRA artist and need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video right below there. So thank you for your support. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Keke Palmer from Turnt Up with the Taylors. Welcome,
Thank
Keke.
you so much. Thank you, Nzinga. It's so good to be with you. And hi to everyone watching, obviously. We're doing it in this new digital framework.
I know, right? It's like interpersonal communications, but I'm giving you a virtual hug. It's safer that way.
Yes.
So let's get down to business. Keke, I want to know, what was your reaction when you heard you were nominated for an Emmy?
Oh my gosh. I was really just shocked and gagged beyond belief. I think, even though you want to perform and you want to create things just because you love what you do, you can't help but also feel that good feeling in your heart when it is acknowledged, the work that you put into something. And, obviously the Emmys are incredible, and you are in very good company to be even nominated. So I just felt very humbled and excited and just grateful, because Turnt Up with the Taylors is something that's come from a sketch that I created on my Instagram, where I really found a lot of my artistic freedom out of the traditional space. So that was also a good sense of encouragement to me to continue to follow my own path.
You know what? You just brought up a really good point that I was thinking about. We live in an age now where platforms, right? Social media platforms are really changing the game for artists.
Yes, they are.
Giving them the freedom to create and have some ownership in their own content. So what has that been like to you? And what message do you have for actors who want to figure out how to utilize this platform?
Oh, it's been huge to me, because I started out very young, and obviously when you're starting out as a child entertainer, a lot of people get attached to what kind of entertainer you were as a child, but there's really no way for you to maintain that. First of all, you're meant to evolve as an artist, but then on top of that, as a kid, you're going to always evolve from being a kid. You're going to grow and become interested in new things and have a different perspective. So, there was no way I could stay in the same mind frame that I was. And so as I continue to grow, it really takes time to reestablish yourself in a traditional sense, to reintroduce yourself to casting and producers and directors and all these things, which is its own thing. And I still have quite a lot of respect for that. And there are some amazing, brilliant casting directors out there that are continuing to find new talent in these new frameworks. But having said that, it also does mean for entertainers and talent, which I think it always has, but it's become more apparent, that we always have to be at the forefront of our stories and the kind of artistic expressions that we want to have, and not be afraid to take the two pennies that we have together and create something from scratch, and not to feel like everything has to be done with $1 million in your pocket. And, I came to understand that through social media when I just had a joke or I wanted to put an idea out there. I've always been really just like a kind of kooky, quirky, creative type of person. And social media really allowed me to explore that. And I started to see that, wow, this is another way that I can speak to my audience and my fans and connect and be inspired. And it doesn't have to always have the glitz and the glams and all this type of stuff. It can just be good because it's come from me. And I do believe when we do the research to look up some of the people that we admire the most, definitely comedians, or even when we're thinking about Will Smith or, even Leonardo DiCaprio, when you look at a lot of their films, you start to see that they were at the forefront of getting those investors involved. They were at the forefront of creating the packaging that allowed them to create their production, empires that they have. So it's nothing new. It's just now people are more being able to see how it's being done. They're able to see the results from start to finish. And I always try to point that out to my audience, that you were there from the beginning when I first did my Lady Miss Jacqueline Southern Belle Insults. You were there from the beginning when I did Turnt Up with the Taylors and I just showed you that character of Chelsea. And now you've been able to see through that consistency of just that one little mustard seed of an idea become an Emmy nomination or become Amazon short stories. And so I'm very happy for the fact that it's now being able to be seen. You're able to see how artists are able to get from point A to point B.
Yes, that's a great point. Let's talk about that development, though, because you started this as a sketch. So let's talk about the developmental process into turning it into an actual series that is now on Facebook Watch.
Yeah.
For you.
It was very interesting because I had been working on another sketch of mine for much longer, and I'd been trying to kind of get that character to a place where I could develop a world for her. And it was taking much of a longer time. But the moment that I put Chelsea Barbie Taylor out there, and, you know, my manager talking to him about the feedback I was getting, and, you know, we're always pitching things. And he says, well, let's pitch it to Facebook Watch and see what we can come up with. After I'm getting all these different views. I mean, I was doing the character for maybe about like a year, about just a year's time, and started getting a lot of feedback on it. And so he said, let's pitch this Facebook Watch, you know, and see how we can connect with a production company, and just, you know, supplying me with the support to help broaden out this idea. And so I took what I had in the sketches, talked with Kids at Play, the production company that I worked with in tandem with Facebook, and we decided to create the world that became Turnt Up with the Taylors alongside my producing partner, Max Wyeth, who I created the character with. And together we just continued to build the world. You know, Chelsea, the character Chelsea, came from me thinking about how we have a lot of entertainers that, you know, we'll see, for instance, Madonna or, you know, Sandra Bullock, where they have Black kids. And I thought to myself, what would that be like? What is that reality for this child that's growing up and is conflicted on what they should define themselves by based off of what they're told their culture should be and the culture in which they're growing up in, you know, because culture is really just where you are and where your world is. It's not really totally based off of your skin tone. You know what I mean? Black people aren't a monolith. And I always wondered what that would be to explore that. And so that's where the character of Chelsea Barbie Taylor came from. She literally just came from that mind frame. And then as I continued to work with her and allow that to be, you know, just unraveled, it became an even different story with her and this family, and it, you know, kind of exploring the self-absorbed nature that can come from social media, and it can come from reality TV, and how we can become kind of more into the brand of who we are as opposed to what we really are. And it's just, I think I'm one of those people, which I think probably maybe many artists are this way, where I don't really push it. I have an idea, I have something that speaks to me, and then I play with it. And then from there, I allow myself to take the experiences that I have, and also seeing the joy and the responses that I get from others to then move me maybe in another direction or inspire me to maybe go down a different area. But I'm very much so the kind of person that goes with the flow and, you know, and lets things come as they may.
So Barbie, the character of Barbie, I keep thinking of her. In fact, this is why I wore this shirt, because I wanted to tap into my inner Barbie.
Yes.
Did I do okay? But let's talk about the other creative tools that you use to help define each of the characters, because they're each so distinct and they all have strong personalities. And girl, let me tell you, I want to know all about their backstory, especially Gammy. Gammy seems scandalous.
Yes, Gammy Tay, you know, she's kind of giving you, you know, she and Rick is her son. So she's the mother-in-law to Miranda, that character. And, you know, Gammy Tay is kind of that old school, you know, she's been in the industry for a while. She's had her time in her day. You know what I mean? She maybe wasn't a golden girl, but she was in the running for one of those roles. And, you know, she has that very much like almost old Jennifer Lewis-esque energy to her, but just a little bit more older because she's obviously, more of an elder. And then you have Rick, who's a very God-fearing, soulful kind of man who I got a lot of inspo from my own father. Now, obviously, it's quite dramatized, and it made much more comical, but I pulled a lot of different mannerisms and just kind of that fierce passion that he has from my dad. And then Miranda, I actually thought a lot about, the actress that played in All in the Family, I believe is the show. Or no, excuse me. What's the one? Love and Marriage.
Married with Children.
Married with Children. The actress that plays the mother.
Oh, Peggy.
I always loved her voice. Like, I just love the texture and tone of her voice. And so when I was thinking of the Miranda character, a lot of inspo did also come from that kind of, she has a very like projected, fierce kind of tone. And so I kind of played a little bit of like what that could sound like, in this kind of character. And then obviously creating the nuances of her maybe being a bit of a drunk, maybe her having one or two mini facelifts, kind of playing in that world. And then, like I said, with Chelsea, the world in which she ultimately came from was a different idea, but then ultimately morphed itself into this kind of influencer, character that is far too invested with being woke, but really not actually being present enough to actually be awake, and playing with the reality of where she came from is, yes, being a Black girl in a very well-off family and growing up in California and, speaking a certain way that, oh, maybe you think she shouldn't speak. I really love to play with that and play the realism of that and not have it not be a second thought or feeling or a thing where this is just this character's world and this is what this family looks like. But they're all different and nuanced. And Little Thad Z, I kind of, got a little bit of inspo from him, from Ray J. Watching Ray J growing up on Moesha and kind of pushing some of those elements of being that rich kid that kind of, wants to play in the hood ways, but ultimately is, always going to be going back to a house in Beverly Hills type vibe. And so I played a little bit into that. And of course, all of it became its own. And that's the fun thing about it is you're always going to have inspo. And then as you get into these characters, you start to find them coming to a life on their own. There's a lot of improv that took place that just happened in the moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How much did you play with improv? But I was like, it's just so much fun and off the cuff. But let's talk about the challenges in preparing for these roles where you're basically having to react to yourself. What is that?
I'll be honest, because I'm a Virgo, I feel very happy to have some sense of control over the whole thing in terms of being able to know a little bit of what I'm going to do or what I'm going to respond to. And I like to shoot very fast. And I think that's a gift and a curse of doing things on social media, is because there's such a, if it's just you're working with, easy peasy lemon squeezy. And I think that's often a transition that people that maybe didn't start out traditional like I did, but maybe just started out in the social media wave, you do have to learn how to work with other people other than yourself. But that's a whole other can of worms. I think for me with this, the hardest part is just the different characters, because it's one thing for me to work on my own and do my own thing and I'm just being Keke or I'm just being Chelsea or I'm just being Lady Miss Jacqueline. But when I'm being a bunch of different people at once, you have to be honest with yourself. And I say this all the time as being a creative, like, you cannot abuse your gift. You cannot abuse your skill, because your brain is working overtime for you. To be able to do these things, and doing it as many years as I've done it for, almost 20 years now, I know that it's nothing I want to play with and lose. And so when I was doing this work, I was making sure that, hey, if we're going to do all these different characters, then let's just switch from 1 to 2 a day, and not doing 4 and 5 all in one day. You know what I mean? Because that's not fair to the gift. That's not fair to the process. I want to be able to give it my all, and I want to be able to, have my brains by the end of it. And that's the thing we often don't talk about. But at the end of the day, just like you love basketball and you're a basketball player, at the end of the day, your body is still a body. So you're still going to have to take care of your body, even if you love what you're doing so much. This is still something that is supporting you. So it's the same thing with acting and your emotions. Whether you're doing comedy or whether you're doing drama, you're still pulling and activating areas of yourself on demand. And we can't take that too kindly, because it's exhausting. No matter how much fun we're having, it's exhausting.
Well, you're bringing up a really good point, because it's exhausting and it's draining. You put a lot of energy into that. And so I get the sense that you definitely have to learn how to compartmentalize and really, really put self-care at the forefront, right? Of just being good to yourself. So what does self-care look like for you as an actor and just as Keke in general?
For me, it really involves spirituality. And I continue to grow more into it every single day, of saving that space and creating that space to go within myself and to be with the Father, and to be with God and the Creator, and know that, it's so easy to get wrapped up in things that especially are coming so natural to you. It's easy to think there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with, all the ideas that's running into my head all the time and everything I have to do. But the reality is that's only one part of me. Yes, it's a part of me that I've existed solely in, since I can remember. I love that. But it's only one part of me. And in order to really even be good to that and really show the respect and the love towards that I have to live in other places. I have to be with my family. I have to spend time working out and doing yoga and, sitting in that inner consciousness where nothing exists but me and space, and be with, say my prayers, go into my meditations. And, that stuff is really important. We really have to create space and trust and learning to trust and know that it's still going to be there for me when I come back, and by the way, I'm going to be better when I come back to it the second time around, because I'm going to be filled up. And I'm not going to be pulling from the same well and wondering why I'm getting all this dirty water back. No, because I keep replenishing it through all these other practices. And so that's something that I continue to learn every day and that I work to understand about myself, because I started out so very young. And, when you start out so young like that, it's like I done put in over 10,000 hours. So these things are coming so easily to me, and I'm not realizing always the toll that they're taking and how to be of best service to myself when managing this gift. And so I'm still learning, and that's why I always talk about it and continue to express the need for that work-life balance, even when it comes to something that's quote unquote passionate and creative. That doesn't mean it can't be taxing.
That's right. Mental health, taking care of your mental health is key. And I'm so happy that we're starting to normalize the conversations around that. So, I really appreciate that.
Me too.
I need to listen to what you just said. I'm like, I am taking note. What Keke said.
It's hard though, isn't it? It spooks you because you almost feel like your life's going to fall apart if you don't do this.
It's almost traumatic because you're like, how am I going to survive? But you cannot pour from an empty cup, right?
And that is capitalism. You know what I mean? Not to go all the way there with it, but that's the framework of our world. So it's not weird and crazy at all that any of us are feeling the trauma response of that, because it dang near is like you're going to die and be, the issues that we're having of today and all the unfortunate issues we're having with homelessness and seeing these things that we have in the country is because of that. And I try to tell people all the time, like, as artists, it's easy to assume that we're living this fabulous, fun, great life. And sure, sometimes it has those great moments and those fabulous times, but we're all on the same hamster wheel. As a matter of fact, the very work that we're doing is our protest against the hamster wheel. And so it's so interesting how we're in an era where there's such a big disconnect between artists and sometimes the people that aren't working maybe from that artistic place as often, because we really are all trying to get through the same thing and figure out the same stuff. So I definitely try also through my works and through social media to continue to express that, that is the purpose of what my gift is. And that's what I try to do and what I try to spread with is that we all on the same team, and I don't like, how difficult anything is any more than the next guy.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for using your platform because you are a powerful voice. So for the artists, for the artists and actors that are on here, I want to know from you, what are the qualities that are essential of being an actor?
Oh, observing.
Mm.
Observing all the people around you. I mean, men, women, children, adults, elders, animals. I'm observing everything, being curious, you know, and letting yourself go past the point of mimicking an expression and being an actual perspective. What would I act like and what would I feel like in response to this conversation or this scenario if my life is being lived through this lens? What kind of person would that make me? And then being able to collect those observations to pull into creating nuances of whomever this person may be, or whatever this world is you're trying to create, or whatever this character is you're trying to tap into. And empathy, empathizing, not being having sympathy or pitying, but truly empathizing and allowing yourself to be put into someone else's mind and not being afraid of how heavy and how dark some of those things might feel. I think it's really important that we admit that it's an emotional game that we play as artists, and you gotta embrace all the depths of it in order to really give that performance. To really put it out on the line. It's a beautiful thing. When it happens.
Because we're also talking about, with COVID and how it really has impacted actors, what is your message? What is your message to artists around the world who are really trying to just stay afloat and are losing hope? What's your message to them?
When you say that, all I think about is Broadway and all the theater actors. And it just kills me because I don't know what to say. Mother Teresa says there can be no great things done, only small things with great love. And I think finding satisfaction in whatever space in which you can create is the important way of feeling free. And I can speak to it from a perspective in which is obviously not as major as going through a pandemic, but starting to reestablish my career at 17 years old after being on a hit kid show and nobody really seeing much of a future for me outside of that, and finding happiness in creative expression in something that was deemed beneath me, like going from being a traditional talent to being an influencer. What's that? You know what I mean? So I think the key is when we're in these spaces of being lost and not knowing what to do and not being able to even imagine or be able to reach some of those places that we think we want to go or we know we're going to be at, it's important to humble ourselves and to find joy in things that we can do and that are accessible to us, because that's going to continue to feed us in the most purest way.
Oh gosh, I'm so rooting for you, Keke. Your future is so bright. I feel like but you've only just begun, girl, because I know
it's only just begun.
Only just begun. Well, Keke, listen, on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I want to thank you for sharing your experience, your process, and craft with your fellow performers.